Hello and welcome to the Shakedown. Our mission is to inform people about how the criminal justice system works, the real people impacted by the justice system, and methods to improve justice through compassionate and casual conversation. Hosts of the Shakedown share over 50 years of combined personal experience dealing with Texas prisons and working to change the criminal justice system. And now, here's our show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shakedown. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Ken Good, and a little bit about Ken Good. He graduated from Hardin-Simmons University in 1982 with a Bachelor of Arts degree. He received a Master of Education degree in 1986 from Tarleton State University, a part of the Texas A&M system. In 1989, he received his law degree from Texas Tech School of Law, where he was a member of the Texas Tech Law Review. Mr. Good has argued cases before the Supreme Court of Texas and the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, along with numerous courts of appeals, including the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. Today, we're talking about bonds and the criminal justice and anything else that comes up. So Ken, thank you again for coming on the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I feel like I need to mention I was second generation Hardin-Simmons. My mom and dad met at Hardin-Simmons. And also, it's really kind of scary that I graduated from law school in 1989. I think that was the year Taylor Swift was born, according to one of her albums. And so I'm feeling very old recently.
You know when Taylor Swift was born, so you're making me look old.
Hey, I am actually a living proof of one of those commercials about fathers and daughters getting closer or having interactions because of the Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey thing.
Oh,
It's crazy. My daughter and I, she set up a group chat with her best friend who is a big total Swiftie. And I mean, the first 2 or 3 days, I said I was so embarrassed by how many posts we'd put on there. And she's like, welcome to a girl chat. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed it. Just talking to my daughter over stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Just
Excellent.
having fun.
Actually, I just had a board meeting today, and Taylor Swift came up in the board meeting. You cannot escape Taylor Swift. That's the world we live in now.
You brought that up. You
And
brought her up, so that doesn't count.
if only I'd show off my true Taylor Swift fandom. But let's talk about. So your specialty is bail bonds and in the industry and the importance. Do you want to talk about that and your thoughts about bonds, the importance, and things we can do to help improve bonds and also criminal justice in general?
Sure. I started out as an attorney representing doctors in hospitals when they got sued. I mean, I've been on court TV representing a doctor, and they said, you're going to lose, and you're going to lose. You're going to have a verdict against you for $5.9 million, and we end up winning. And so, I also have done a lot of appellate work, which you've already mentioned. But as a result of that, someone called me having a bail bond issue, and so that kind of has now morphed into that's probably the primary area of my practice. I represent a lot of bondsmen on when they have issues, and not trouble issues, like they have just bond forfeitures and they need to have the right result, whatever the law requires. But also represent some Texas counsel for some entities that write bail throughout the United States. And I was asked to go to a hearing in Houston at the very beginning of this movement for what I call bail reform, bad bail reform, which has really made the criminal justice system a whole lot worse. And I went to this hearing and I came out going, this judge is going the wrong way. She doesn't understand the issues. She's going to rule wrong. And we need to become experts on these issues. And so I set out with my my legal appellate background to become very versed in these issues. And I've written many articles since then. And I will say I was proven correct on what my initial opinion was of this judge. This judge has been reversed 7, 8, or 9 times now on bail reform issues, and ultimately the Fifth Circuit ruled in its last ruling that the case that I was there watching should have never been filed in federal court, and we're still suffering from the ramifications of her rulings, and the problem is, we have a system that was working. We always need to look to improve it, but it had the lowest failure to appear rate, and we're replacing it, or we're trying out new things that have very high failure to appear rates. And when you don't show up for court, then your case has to be put on hold. And when your case is put on hold, you have to do something to get brought back into the system. Sometimes that's just you come back. A lot of times it's you commit another crime to come back. And so we're replacing a system that needed to be tweaked that was working well with a system that's creating chaos. Chaos creates de facto decriminalization, and decriminalization is a green light for people to commit more crime. We know that. We have lots of data coming out to prove that now. We have California's data showing that if you release somebody just on a simple release just for free, then there's a 200% greater chance they're going to commit another crime, a violent offense the next 18 months versus somebody released on a surety bond. So we're seeing that multiple studies showing that recidivism rates for people released for free uh, are a lot higher, which means they commit more crimes. They see that as a green light to commit more crime. And so you're starting to see a lot of pullback. You're seeing New York has rolled back their bail reform 4 or 5 times. California tried to extend it. There was a referendum that said no. You see the ramifications of what's going on in California when they stop prosecuting crime for theft under $950. Businesses close because they can't withstand shoplifting of $25,000 a day. Buildings start closing because they're not safe for their employees to come to work. And so we know what works, and we're replacing what works in a lot of places, or we're trying out theories that have never been proven to work, and now the data is coming out showing that they're complete failures. And we still have people pushing them as the gold standard for what we should be doing going forward, and that's crazy.
So one thing I want to clarify too, just for the people who don't know about the like when you're talking about surety bonds versus PR or personal recognizance bonds, is that so when someone gets a when someone is suspected of a crime and they get arrested, then they go to jail, and then a judge will they'll go in front of a judge as soon as the judge is available, and then the judge will set a bond, and that if it's in a surety bond, then the person arrested will have to put up through a bondsman or through a lawyer or someone who can make who's authorized through the state to pay bonds. They will have to put up that 10% of that bond right there, and so that they can leave jail and then await further hearings for their case. And then
We have different, we call it different, the bail systems are regulated by the states, and then we have the federal system. And so each state can be different. So what's called a personal bond in Texas could be called something else in California. It's called release on zero bail. In New York, it's called released without bond. But and so I kind of lump those all together and just call them simple release, where you're being released for free. Like in Texas, we call it a personal bond. It has a financial amount tied to it, because in Texas, a bond has to have a financial amount. It's supposed to be a bond set at an amount that will ensure that you appear for court. And so even if it's a personal bond, if it's for $1,000, you didn't pay $1,000, you didn't pay anything usually for it. It just has a financial amount. It's your promise to pay. If you posted a surety bond, it's $1,000. You're probably going to pay $100 to the bondsman to post that bond. and or a cash bond. And there's other things that Texas doesn't recognize, like Illinois used to have pure cash bonds, where you could post a percentage of the bond with the courts. That's what they just got rid of. They got rid of surety bonds several decades ago. As you can see, crime was going up. Now they've made it even worse because they were relying upon the deposits with the courts to fund court operations, and now they've taken that away and haven't replaced that money. So again, reform is going to create further chaos in Illinois. Chaos creates de facto decriminalization, and de facto decriminalization creates more crime. And I would say that's what we've seen in Illinois for the last decade, as they've gotten rid of the surety system, and now that where they've replaced gotten rid of what was left of holding people accountable.
So, my question on that is why, if they're decriminalizing certain offenses, why would that create more crime? Wouldn't that lessen the amount of crime that's going into it? And what are the numbers that you're seeing on that aspect?
Well, that's a good point about, when you decriminalize crime, you can make it look like crime's going down. But, when, you go to San Francisco and the Nancy Pelosi federal building tells all the federal employees, work from home, it's not safe for you to come to work in our building anymore. I don't, you can't call that less crime. I mean, you don't have public safety when you decriminalize crime. You have a lot of chaos. So, why does de facto decriminalization create more crime? Because we have this. I would say in our urban cities, we have this group within a group. We have the city of Houston, and inside that city of Houston, we have this smaller city, which we could call Crimeville in city of Houston. Because we have, a lot of the crime is committed by the same groups: organized crime, gangs, and career criminals. So if we were to address that group, we would probably address over 60% of crime. But you've got another gray area living between the two cities that's like, I can be influenced. Am I going to live in Crimeville? Well, if nobody's going to be held accountable, I'm going to move to Crimeville. Or, you know what? People are being held accountable. I don't want to go to prison, so I'm going to live in Houston. And so, what de facto decriminalization does, chaos does, it overwhelms the system. If you, let's use a simple example. In an urban city, you have 1,000 people have to show up for court in a given week. If you're using the private surety system predominantly, you're going to have a 10% or less failure to appear rate. So that means 100 people are going to fail to show up that week. But if you're using personal bonds or simple release, if you look at the statistics from Houston, it's an 80% failure to appear rate. In a week, if you look at what's going on in California in misdemeanor court, it's an 80% failure to appear rate. If you look at some other statistics, you could say, well, it's 50%. But let's just use a 50% number. It just dominoes. The first week, 500 people don't show up. So the next week, you have 1,500 have to show up. So then 750 don't show up. 750 plus 1,000. I'm not good at math, but it just dominoes. And when you do that, the reason why it puts pressure on the criminal justice system is, we're always adding predominantly this, on average, the same number of cases to the conveyor belt of the criminal justice system every week. Anything that slows it down, creates a backlog, puts pressure on the courts to just dismiss cases to keep the system from collapsing. And so as the backlogs get bigger, they will dismiss more cases. And if you are a criminal and you're like, hey, I never even went to court and they dismissed my case, I can do this again. If you don't have accountability in the criminal justice system, then your people will see that for what it is, a green light to commit more crime. And the reason why I have hope is because what's going on is not sustainable. We cannot continue down this path. That's why you're starting to see in New York, you've seen people defend themselves. You saw the DA just come out and say he was not going to prosecute somebody who got into a fight with somebody in the subway system, and the perpetrator had a gun. The guy fought him, got the gun, and then there were shots fired, and the perpetrator got got killed or shot. And the DA decided not to prosecute the victim, the person who was attacked. You're going to see more of that. We're going to have vigilante justice if the communities are not going to provide public safety. So that's why I'm like, this isn't sustainable. It's already impacting our commercial buildings values. I mean, you've got buildings in California selling for 30% of their value from a year ago. Um, and you're going to start seeing defaults. Then you're going to start seeing city defaults, and you've got the mayor's already calling for change. You can look at Oakland is the prime example. The NAACP in Oakland, that chapter said we've got to have a state of emergency on crime. And first they said, "Oh, you're just right wing. You're just repeating the right wing talking points." The governor recently sent in additional California highway patrolmen to help address crime, and it has helped. It's to the point where I don't know, it's going to take a lot more than 75 additional officers to uh, cause crime to go down.
I have so many questions to ask you. Uh, uh, starting with you said that the system that we have now is works, but it needs to be tweaked. I'd like to hear what your ideas of tweaking. What do you think would be the perfect system?
Well, you want to okay. Well, what's the purpose of bail? The purpose of bail is to assure that you will come back to court to address the charges that have been filed against you. So the perfect system, I would say, if you're a first-time offender, I might just release you. But if you are not successful on that, then accountability would say, I'm not going to give you that again. So I'm not going to give you a personal bond a second time. And we've got examples in Houston where they're getting 10, 15, 16, 17 personal bonds back to back to back. And when they fail to show up, they just get arrested and re released again. Um, I think any system will work, but it will work better if you have a layer of accountability on it. I mean, I think the old system or the system that works currently, if you fail to show up for court, they just double your bond, or they do in some areas. Well, that's the consequence of you failing to do what you promised to do. And I think the courts have to have a layer of accountability. If we're taking all accountability out of your promise to show up for court, then why be shocked when you don't show up for court? So I would say
You answered
any
not
system
only
has to have accountability.
you answered my question, and you answered my second question. You didn't even know it. I was going to ask because I was going to ask you. Well, I mean, it seems to me like there should be some kind of I thought there was some kind of a consequence for not showing up for court. I mean, how many of these? Is there a statistic for how many people that are no shows eventually end up back in court anyways?
Uh, ooh. Well, I did a podcast with a DA from California, and he said that California and their misdemeanor courts use just simple release. So that's what they do for all misdemeanors. So their misdemeanor courts across the state have an 80% failure to appear rate. Now, we don't hear that, but an 80% failure to appear rate, because if you miss court, they can't go get you because it's a misdemeanor. Like Texas will not go to another state and extradite you for a misdemeanor. So we're like right now today, Tarrant County their jail is full. So if you fail to miss court and you're a misdemeanor, and the police find you and take you to their car, the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office will not confirm the warrant, and so you'll be released because the jail's full. Um, and so that's one way to handle jail overcrowding. It's not a good way. It's going to make it worse. It's just, and they don't realize it. So I think that you have to. I mean, look. I mean, if you're not going to hold people accountable, then you're just going to make it worse. Because during these last couple of years, the groups that are finding out what the new rules are, organized crime gangs and career criminals, are making money hand over fist. Look at the catalytic converter thefts by themselves. That's across the country. Now, the statistics on crime that I think is the most valid is car thefts, because insurance companies still require a police report before they'll before they'll pay off the claim. And so you're seeing in a lot of our urban areas, uh, car thefts go up 25% a year. I mean, in some areas they go up a lot more than that. Um, but overall, on a nationwide basis, our crime statistics are still static or going down, and that's because we're still using, for the predominant majority of the country, the tried and true methods of criminal justice, of what we know works. These theories that are being pushed by our friends on the extreme are not even any method that's ever been tested. There's no research that says it's going to work. It's just, hey, this is what you should be doing. This is the more fair thing. And, the Vera Institute says any reform to the criminal justice system is going to carry a 40% failure to appear rate, and that should be okay. A 40% failure to appear rate will destroy or crumble the criminal justice system in our urban areas, because they have too many cases being added on average every week. I mean, look in Harris County. We just got a report in Houston that the Houston police officer, or police department, had closed 200 and over 250,000 cases, and they marked it with, the reason why they closed it was lack of staff. Lack of staff. They were bragging last year that crime was going down. Now we know why. They were hiding the numbers.
Um, you said so much stuff there. It's kind of hard to know where to jump back in on all that. We
But
were talking. Okay, you were talking about is your primary problem with the way that with the PR bonds and all that, the no shows for court, or I mean, because that seems to me like like the solution isn't necessarily PR bonds. It's having a stiffer penalty for not showing up for court.
Well, but if the stiffer penalty for not showing up for court is you don't get another personal bond, then all you're doing is making it worse for the defendant. I mean, if I was a judge and you came before me, I would be looking at you and say, "Do you have a criminal history?" Because criminal history is the best, probably, evidence of whether you're going to do something again. So if you come in before me as a judge, or if you come before me and I'm the judge and you have no criminal history, it's a low level crime, I, I would consider releasing you on a personal bond. But here's what I'm doing. I mean, you are already a lost child because you're in the criminal justice system. You don't know
But
how
this
this
one, you're
works.
not. No one's
You
been.
don't
He hasn't,
you don't
the person hasn't
know
been
what you're
convicted
supposed to
though.
do. I mean,
So
I'd be like, if I'm in an urban city, I want you to have somebody that's going to walk you through the system, and it's not going to be a government agency. I'd want you to have a private industry bondsman, so that they could ensure that you come to work. I mean, they're ensuring that you're going to come to court. But if I gave you a personal bond and you didn't show up, I sure as heck wouldn't give you a second one. And if I've increased your bond, so if I gave you $1,000 bond and you don't show a personal bond, which is, it didn't cost you anything, it's just signature, but you don't show up, so I double the bond, or I 10 times the bond to 10,000, and now I require a personal bond. I mean a surety bond. Well, now your premium's gone from $100 to $1,000 on, when I know that, just giving you a personal bond, the failure to appear rate's at least 50%. So there's a 50-50 shot you're not going to show up for court, either because you overslept or because you just didn't know where to go, you got scared. And so you're going into a worse position just because on the type of bond that I gave you as the judge. If you've got a criminal history, I'm going to set your bond higher, and I'm not going to give you a personal bond because you've got a more serious offense. If you have a criminal history, well, then I'm not doing it, because I'm not doing you a favor because you've got a criminal history. And so that requires more supervision in my mind, and the best supervision that's provided is provided by the private industry. The biggest difference between a personal bond and the private industry is if you don't show up for court. If you don't show up for court on your personal bond, they're just going to issue a warrant. That warrant's going to go down the hall, and it's going to go into the warrants department. It's going to join all the other warrants waiting to be served. In the urban areas, that's tens of thousands, which that means you have to either come in willingly, or that means you have to commit another crime to come back into the system. If you're on a bond that's been posted by the private industry, they're they're calling you right away. Hey, did you remember you had court today? And if you, oh crap, they'll walk you through what you can expect. This is what we need to do. This, you need to get you back as soon as possible. Or if you start running, then there's going to be somebody that will be looking for you. Uh, So you'll be looking over your shoulder. So the big difference between the private industry and these simple release measures is getting your case back on track, getting justice to the victims as quickly as possible. One of the things I've learned very early as an attorney is justice delayed is justice denied, and that's absolutely true. If you delay it long enough, they'll dismiss your case.
You can find Shakedown merch, graphic novels, and other projects at waywordpress.com. That's WAYWORD press.com. If you would like to support The Shakedown, get exclusive content, and watch episodes live, you can support us at patreon.com/The Shakedown. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment to give Malone that inner peace he so richly deserves.